Welcome to the Mortal Realms, an Age of Sigmar story phase. Grab your hammer so we can clear a path through the chaos and forge our own narratives in the Age of Sigmar. Your allies through the Realm Gate this episode are...
I'm Davey, and the path is G L O R Y G L O R Y.
I can't follow that up, but I'm Aaron, and I actually failed Sacred Geometry class.
Ooh, yes. I'm Paul, and you need to speak up. I'm hard of hearing.
And this is Eric. Does blood tongue have your cat? In this episode, we're discussing Path to Glory by Evan Dicken, where we see the remnants of a great empire in the Age of Myth catch the tail end of Sigmar's exodus into Azyr. If you're watching us on YouTube, like and subscribe this channel. If you're listening on your favorite podcast app, please leave us a review and then share this episode on social media to introduce more people to the Age of Sigmar lore. How are you tonight, gentlemen?
Doing just fine. And yourself?
Doing great. We recorded our last episode just a week ago, and we're back.
Ooh, yeah. Hope they're not sick of us.
From outer space? From outer space.
Yeah. Exactly that. So what you guys been up to? Anything new? Anything fun?
It's been just a week. No, definitely not. There's no time for fun.
New dad.
I went to the Brew City Brawl. That was awesome.
In Milwaukee.
Yep.
Wisconsin.
Thank you to
Did you get the hat?
Brendan and Bryce. I thought the hat matched pretty well.
Good.
So, yeah, it was good. It was good times.
It looked like a lot of fun. And really sweet prize support on the tail end of that.
Mm-hmm. I got some stuff. I got this. It's a Snotling Pump Wagon. I got 2 of them.
Cool.
And I got a Goblin Warboss on Great Cave Squid.
Nice.
So I'm happy. I got all the Goblin stuff.
It's like they tailored the prizes to you.
You do enough grot scuttling.
Yeah.
Every day, Scotland.
Every day I'm scuttling.
Every day I'm scuttling.
On the table.
And I scooped it right up.
How about Davey? How about you, Davey? What you been up to?
A lot of Shadespire, paint some Shadespire warbands. Got a couple licks of paint on the
You bringing hobby back?
yeah. Well, it's been
Aaron's bragging about like a brush full of paint.
The only one.
3 colors, actually.
Ooh.
And actually it's been getting my mind rolling around, just thinking about what army I might branch out in. I got some Stormcast models kicking around with a couple of warbands. I was thinking it might be fun to do some Knights Excelsior or something like that, and then have them dirtied and chipped and blood spattered or something like that. So.
And you're talking just for Shadespire or for a bigger?
For Shadespire, and then kick it out a little bit bigger, maybe.
Just double Shadespire.
Yeah, I love the background and the models for the overlords. I feel like there's not a lot of ways to think about playing them. Is the thing that's frustrating me. And that's definitely one of the big things I get from the hobby is thinking like, oh, well, what if I added this one thing here and rebuilt it. That's one thing that's been fun about Shadespire is you can swap your cards out and all of a sudden your warband's very different. So
yeah. And I've been spending a little time chatting with you guys and chatting with Brendan Melnick from the guys from Milwaukee who ran.
I saw him this weekend.
Yeah, who ran the Brew City Brawl, and he and I've been talking about doing a narrative siege in October here in Madison, Wisconsin. I posted a little bit about that online. Put up a teaser video, kind of introducing the narrative. And
this is where you surround a castle and read books at it until they give up. Narrative siege, is it?
Yeah. Yep. Until it falls over. And so getting excited for that, and lots to think about in terms of how to make it fun, how to bring the kind of realm master idea. So there's people are going to be we're going to give you some cool rules to try and master and siege or defend this castle, and then we'll have the realm masters to just befuddle all your plans. Befuddle. So but no, it's been a lot of fun crafting story and mechanics. So
I'm very excited to see this grow and be a part of it come the fall. It feels narrative on the ambition and scale of some of the best things that we've seen, like Rise of Empires and all that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
Let's not give him a big head before he even like finishes it.
Well, there's some shoes to fill, and I definitely have all those the eat bat Mitzi or eat foot bat the Realms at War guys.
Jimbo 9 Jimbo. Jimbo 9 Jimbo.
Just
and Jimbo
they're all
9 Jimbo.
and then the Rise of Empire, you know, all those guys are rooting us on and hoping that we can put on a good show that brings more of that style of narrative to the West. So Midwest.
To the West.
All right. So yeah, more information on that coming as we get closer and have more stuff to reveal, etc. And you know, obviously go to the YouTube channel. You can watch that video.
It's really cool.
Thanks, man. Wow. I don't know what to do after getting a compliment on this.
I don't give those out. Don't give those out freely.
no, we throw a couple out there just to make sure that you stick around for all the other.
Shut me up a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a balancing of the scales.
Yeah.
The anvil of apotheosis.
Yeah.
Need to strike a balance. All right.
It's very
Anything else you guys want to talk about before we jump into the story phase?
How could we stop you once you've led into it with such a sweet bumper?
Well, in the story phase, we delve into the stories, the characters, the creatures, and the environments of the 9 realms.
All right.
Take it away, Paul. Paul, take it away.
I'm
Paul,
working
take it away
on
now.
it. I'm working on it.
Paul, what are you doing? Can you hear us?
Take it away now. Take it away. Take it away. Take it away now.
Oh, he's gone crazy.
No. All right. Mute him.
The age of myth is over. After centuries of peace, the forces of chaos have returned to the mortal realms. An order is being overrun. Sigmar has retreated to Azyr, and those left behind make their stand in the face of the numberless hordes of the dark gods. In the ruins of the Lantic Empire, a few brave heroes lead their shattered armies in the defense of their once mighty realm. With their empress dead, a captain, a sorcerer, and the new emperor must make a stand and try to save their people.
Paul, are you going to read it? Are you going to read it now?
Totes.
Is there a joke in there about Atlantic Empire? Is there something there? I feel like there's something.
I feel like you can't go there anymore because it's destroyed. But maybe you could have gone to there and then the Atlantic. Yeah.
All right, let's start the podcast.
Is that like a Yelp review? Checking in Atlantic.
Get out of here.
Oh,
3 stars.
That's why we need all 4 of us.
Right.
That's why we need all of us to do this.
So we're starting with the spoiler-free bit of content. We're going to talk about the book without spoilers. So those of you listening who happen upon this can get a kind of a taste for it. Maybe go out and, based on this, make a decision on whether you want to take the time to read it. And then we'll let you know when we're going to get into the spoilers. You can go away if you get out of here, read it, and then come back and listen to the
Sure.
show.
Yeah, we don't love you anymore. Please just go.
So
Aaron's got a really sweet alarm. He's going to ring.
That's not. Don't.
Totally.
I don't. That's not true.
well, now you gotta.
Well,
You have to. I said it.
Make the noises that my daughter does. Guys, let's talk about the spoiler-free stuff. Let's get the facts. Everybody listen to facts.
All right.
Here's about
Boring.
let's do real hard investigative journalism here. When are we doing this? I think it's appropriate that we're dealing with this story right on the heels of our Undying King, the Nagash book, because both are set in the Age of Chaos. I think Nagash was a little bit deeper into that Age of Chaos, but this is sort of right on that cusp, right in the beginning. That's when this is taking place. So it's beginning of the Age of Chaos. As far as we know, right out the outset, Sigmar is sort of skipping town, boogieing up out of here. As we've learned from other books, he's lost his hammer and he's like, oh nope, sorry, I'm going to take all my toys and go home. And so he's heading back to Azyr and bringing all his friends and balls with him. The Pantheon's fractured. The sort of last line of defense for the mortal realms is sort of fallen a little bit. That's the setting that we find ourselves in. Anyone else have anything else they want to add?
Just that it's a good setting to learn more about. When we first came into the Age of Sigmar, it was kind of a little bit of a twist where the last thing we'd seen prior to getting here was the fall of the old world, and we arrived, and not only is there a new world, but that new world has now almost fallen on top of that. And so we knew that it had, but we didn't know a ton about the how or what that looked like when it was happening, or not a whole ton about what it looked like before. So this is filling out some of that kind of that history, and we'll talk a little bit more later, I think, about what that brings. But I think it's, for someone who's wanting to learn more about the overall, I think it's cool to have another one set in this to bulk this thing out that we don't know so much about.
Well, and I think what's interesting here as a point of, we here in our group and somewhat on Twitter and listening to other people talking, there's this certainly within the stories, the Black Library stories, they certainly paint a picture intentionally of, these gods as not black and white with shades of gray. And so I think this book will give more fuel to being able to kind of debate, the morality of Sigmar, or, what this decision's a pretty big one, to call the forces of order back to Azyr. And there's a lot of opinions on whether that's forthright, or if it's cruel, or whether there's any business making this call, and this book addresses that pretty head on.
I think it's neat that a lot of the like the actual age of Sigmar as a setting, like age wise, a lot of the books that we've read, even when we get the perspectives of the people on the ground, or the people out there, we get a lot of their opinions on sort of retroactively how they think about how the Age of Chaos went and how Sigmar reacted to it. But this is great that we sort of see it a little bit more while it's happening, or you're sort of concurrent with it. So it's not looking in the past, but dealing with it sort of in a more present tense, which is cool. I'll support. Neat. We go from when. Let's talk about where are we at. So someone tell me what realm we're in. I want to hear it stylized.
Romo metal.
Oh gosh. There it is. That's the one I was looking for. I knew Paul would play. So yeah, we're in Shaman, specifically not Azyr, because that we're in danger. Like, this is not the safe realm. Back in the Age of Chaos, we're getting a good sort of glimpse, as we alluded to already, of what the residents of this particular realm, sort of how they are dealing with the threat of chaos knocking on their doorstep in this age, and just, again, like we said, how they are reacting to Sigmar's absence, or whatever you want to call it. It informs a lot of sort of the action of the story, or the history of of these people that we're following. But beyond that, I don't know how much more it sort of changes how important it is to the plot per se. Do you guys feel like it really had a big effect? Again, besides some of the sweet, like, stylized battles that we read about.
I think one of the cities that we were in very much has its place in the realm of metal, and I don't think it would make as much sense in any of the other realms. So for that reason, I would say yes, I think the setting is important.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes a place. What I think we've got, I mean, there's a cool setting. I mean, the character of the Lantic Empire that we meet talk about themselves as being like gold and steel. So there's some elements there that kind of play into the character. And I think one of the cool things we do see a different free guild community, or people expressed in a really unique way. Man, it makes me wonder how they're going, if they are going to change the free guild at any point. Do we bring out any new models or whatnot? Like, there's so much variety to choose from in terms of the lore, from barbarian clans to something like this, to Bretonnian style pageantry. So there's just so many expressions of free guild, and this is just a really cool one that would be fun to, I don't know how you would get models for this on the table, but it's pretty cool.
Sure.
And actually, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, maybe I take back what I said before when I was saying that the realm wasn't having as much effect on the plot. No, it does, especially with the point when you make about how I think a lot of the decisions that the people are making that we're following, which we'll talk about later, stem from the fact that they consider themselves sort of, tough like iron or what have you. That comes up occasionally. So you're right. No, it does inform the events that we see in the book. I forgot about that. And then just as furthermore, it's fun because, we get all these new armies coming out, your Fire Slayers, your Silver Knights, whatever. It seems like every single one has like a sub faction where it's like, well, this is this army, but it happens to live in this realm. I didn't really put two and two together, but that is almost what we're seeing here with like a Free Guild army. It's, hey, these are the Free Guild armies. And what happens if they lived in Traman? What's a metal version of them? So it's sort of following that same trend that you see with the other armies. I guess I wasn't thinking about it because it's just regular humans, but obviously it's not.
Nope. There's a really interesting point that I want to make when we get into the spoiler section. That is, I think, very key.
We will let you make one point when we get into the spoiler section.
And I think it's specifically key to being in the realm of metal. So,
okay.
And if it's not a key point, take a point away from you.
Oh, hey! Are we keeping track here? I didn't know we were keeping track.
This is an objective-based podcast.
Rules only make the points don't matter, but we are keeping track.
Yeah.
I'm so scattershot, I don't even know where the objectives are. Man.
Oh, God, I literally wrote down that the realm of metal informs the type of people in the civilization that the land. It's literally right there.
You're pulling back the curtain, Aaron.
I need to read it the morning before we talk about it for me to remember anything. Who would do that?
Do I get points taken away for that?
No. Well, no.
I'd have to get points taken away then, too, right?
All right, let's press ahead.
We've alluded to the people. Let's talk about who. So, right, even I think in the summary of the story, they talk about the sort of the three players that we're dealing with of this Lantic Empire in the realm of metal. So, where these characters have something in common in that they're sort of dealing with being thrust into positions that they aren't prepared for. Like chaos is overrunning their empire. And the people we're following aren't traditionally in these roles of leadership, I guess you'd say. And so, who wants to talk about Captain Sulla? Tell me about her.
Oh, Captain Sulla. She is a venerated warrior in the Lantic Legion. She's a captain in the Lantic Legion, and she is serving a particularly kind of well-known hero who doesn't get a ton of time, Zarastia. Shoot, that was a spoiler. It's Captain Sulla, and she's takes orders, right? She's a soldier. She knows her place. At the same time, early on, we see that she's a little bit disillusioned by specifically Sigmar. So that voice of like, what's going on here? Who is he to, make decisions he's made. You find out early on that she's a little sour.
Sure. So that's our captain, the martial prowess character. But we also have a wizard, like every good party must have. And this is Kazlan. Everyone, Kazlan.
Yep, that works for me.
Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
Say it again though.
Kazlan, one more time.
Yep.
Who wants to tell me about this crafty wizard?
Well, he is a sorcerer in the Gilded Order. It very much appears to be in the old world, he would have been a realm of metal wizard, a metal wizard of Shaman.
What were those called again? Amber or
Battle wizards?
Gold. I was looking for them. Yeah.
He was a gold wizard. Balthazar Gelt was the head of the Magician's Guild, and he was a gold wizard. So
yeah.
Interesting that we've got gold here.
He'll be brought back to the Age of Sigmar any day now.
So he's an interesting character. He's definitely not the head of the order. He is one of the underlings, but he is not the lowest of the low. He's kind of middling, third of middling in the order. He has access to some things that most people don't have, but he's not.
If you were to rank him, what number would you give him?
If we're doing like a 1 to 8 for spider legs, I'd do like 4, maybe.
Perfect.
4 or 5.
Middling. Okay, cool.
And he's kind of, when we meet him, he's kind of taking charge of defenses.
In the city itself, right?
Yeah, correct. So he's got some magical skills that we're going to talk about.
That was not the spoiler bell.
Sure, no. All right, spoilers now. And then the third character, this emperor thrust into a role I was not expecting to get, is this Livius. And Davey, I'm sorry, you're the last one, so you got to talk about this chump.
He's the last one we meet. He's part of a royal bloodline of this empire, and this empire itself. The family and the empire is crumbling under the assaults during the Age of Chaos, and he will be the first to tell you that he is not anyone's first choice for the throne. He's pretty far down that family, but circumstances have led him into this, and now the question is whether he'll rise to that challenge or not.
Sure. I think he's down the line also, I mean, because of literally like lines of succession, but you'll get we'll all find out that he's not the most. He doesn't have a lot of leadership qualities. Is a nice way to put it. He's not real.
If we use Paul's scale, Captain Sola is like a number 2 on the two legs, the second leg. Castellan's like number 4, and Livius is like the 8th leg.
Okay.
Or like some other leg.
If one is the best.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
I always heard first was the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think 8 is the best, right? Because normal people have 2 legs, so like 8 would be the top.
All right, so Sola would be 7, Castellan 4, and Livius 1.
But then if are 4 legs good and 2 legs better?
For
I'd like to apologize to all our listeners at this point.
I apologize.
You waited this
for that
long
apology.
to apologize?
I just want people to know that I don't just read like Sigmar fiction. I'm well enough read to have read a little bit of Orwell. Anyways, let's go to the what. Let's talk about the what. What's going on here? So like we said before, we're basically following the perspective of these 3 aforementioned characters as they're basically going to try and save what's left of this empire. They're facing overwhelming odds. They don't call it the Age of Chaos because there's just a little bit of chaos, but like they're facing overwhelming numbers of chaos at every turn, and they're being chased, like literally actively being hunted to extinction. And so question is what are these 3 different individuals? How are they going to go about saving themselves and their people? Not an easy task.
Yeah, they're under siege, as it were. And it was funny, we were talking about the siege event that we're starting to be percolating, and we're like, where can we go for inspiration? And it was
did we all do that hand stuff?
Yeah. And it was right here in the book we were reading. So it was kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, I mean, it was just cool to kind of, there's this kind of last pull back to the city, and how do they, and we got that a little bit with, Legion of the Gash, where, the fortresses were kind of being overrun and then kind of led to a final siege. So these sieges are important. They're an important part of our Age of Sigmar history.
Sure.
Yeah. So I have something I don't think it's a spoiler, but if it is a spoiler, it's a very tiny spoiler.
We'll whisper it.
Go ahead and say it right now.
Type it in the chat.
I'm gonna whisper it.
We're about to hit the spoiler section.
Yeah, I mean, we're right there. If you want to wait.
I know, but I just want to give one more hint, right?
He just wants to ruin it for everyone.
For people that haven't read the book, right? So the Lantic Empire was this huge empire that spanned the realms, right? And we come into this story, and everybody thinks that almost everything has been destroyed, right?
Yeah.
So we come along the last remnants trying to rescue the last city, right? So we have this whole rich, varied background. But as far as we know, there's one city left. And that's where this story starts. So I don't think that's a spoiler.
No.
But I think it helps a lot to set the setting of what we're actually reading about here.
I think that's book jacket material.
Yeah. I approve. I like that you still got real close to it, though.
Yeah.
I was whispering.
You actually weren't, but
I was trying to be audible.
I was on the edge of my seat. Cool. So we can get into spoilers in just a hot second, but I feel like we normally talk about what we thought of it. But let's give our thoughts so people know if they should go out and read it. I'm gonna go last.
I think, and I've said it many times, I think a lot of Black Library stuff works very well as short stories. This is a shorter piece of fiction, and you can get a lot of entertainment. It's high efficiency entertainment, and like I was saying earlier, it tells us about a part about the mortal realms that we didn't know a lot about. And I'll save the rest of my assessment for the spoiler section. But yeah, I recommend.
Paul, you're next on my screen.
All right. So I would point out that this is written by Evan Dicken. This is his first book that he's written for Black Library, but he's written other books, right? So this is kind of an interesting thing that we haven't talked about on the cast before, but somebody who's an established author who's writing in the Mortal Realms for the first time. So if you have an idea of what it feels like or why this is important to the author, there's actually a really cool post that they put on Twitter from Evan Dicken himself about how excited he was to have this book published and how for him this is the life goal, right? So it's a short story. It's a first-time Black Library author, but it's not a first-time writer. And it's somebody who, has been kind of living his life with this goal in mind. So it's got a lot more passion than might be apparent from somebody. If you look at it, you go, oh, this guy hasn't written anything for Black Library. Oh, it's a short story. It's not going to be that good. I would caution you to not assume that.
So you would not want them to be cautious about reading it.
Yes.
They should read it.
Basically what you're saying is people have to like it or you're going to crush this man.
No. I didn't say that.
Or Paul Wagner will come to your home.
It sounds like you recommend it. People should give it a shot.
Yes, for sure. It's a short story. It's well done. I like it a lot.
Sure.
I like it a lot.
I think people should be hesitant to not realize how influential the writer was on writing this book. I thought it was a really good book. It's a quick read. It's not, as Davey said, it's short form. Each of these characters, easily could have been like their own little vignette, kind of peek into some aspect of this culture and kind of like in this point in time in the age of chaos, in the circumstance, and all of them are, have really compelling story arcs in this. And I think, and when we talk about it, later I'll get more detail, but I could see these guys continuing on and hearing more little kind of snippets and tidbits, the way Josh Reynolds kind of pulls characters into other things. I'm invested. So in this, however many pages in this ebook or EPUB, it got me really kind of pumped to see what happens next. And it's a unique kind of perspective and from all three of them. So I really liked it a lot.
Right.
I want to add one more detail before we go on to the spoiler-free zone after Aaron. So there was that campaign supplement that was put out last year. What was that called again? It's
like Path Above Glory, Path Around Glory.
True.
No,
True
like
Glory.
The flame. I'm totally blanking here.
Firestorm.
Oh,
yeah.
I was just kidding. You're not talking about Path to Glory?
No, I'm not talking about Path to Glory. I'm talking about Firestorm. Because Firestorm is set in the realm of metal, if I'm not mistaken, and it does talk about the Lantic Empire slightly. Am I correct?
I think it's an action.
Because I'm literally putting it out on the internet.
I think it's an action.
It's over. I'm not going to open it, but it's over there.
Okay. All right. Then we've heard of the Lantic Empire somewhere.
We have. It's popped up.
This is an expansion upon it.
It was referenced in, I believe,
the Arcane. Yeah, Arcane Battletome, or the Ever-Chosen Battletome, right?
All right.
Is that what you were going to say, Davey?
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I'm not sorry.
I'm going to get past this because I'm embarrassed. I also recommend the book. First of all, we kept saying it was a short story. It's not like your short, like your e-shorts that they post out. Like it's a little bit longer than that. It's just not a whole novel by any means. It's somewhere in between, I think. Like it has like almost chapters in it. I definitely really liked it. I love the fact that it was very coherent and concise, and I think that's the nature of it being sort of shorter. Like it had very clear beginning, middle, and end. the characters are all very believable and like had their own motivations, like, which you can't always say about every book that we read. All in all, it was just well crafted, like a great idea and a great execution of that idea.
Yeah.
So I'm all for it. Like I want to read more about these characters, but I'd read more from Mr. Dicken as well. Good job, man.
Absolutely.
All right.
He's not on Twitter. I was gonna try and link him. All right, I don't think
now,
he is.
if what we said enticed you to go and read this book, take a little bit of time. Again, it's maybe take you a few days or a week to put it together or to read it. Then stop now. Aaron's going to insert the spoiler alarm right now.
Now.
Can someone have someone ring that doorbell again?
All right. So spoiler.
Right now.
Scott read zone. Stop. Read the book.
And here we go.
Done and done. This is normally the part where we talk about what happens, like plot wise. So someone talk me through who do we meet first? I think we already went in that order, but like where do we find ourselves?
Captain Sola is on the battlefield. Correct me if I'm wrong, right?
No, you're right. Got it.
And she is fighting under the banner of Empress Zerastia. And they're up against the Chaos Lord, the Winnower. That's his nickname. You
All
know,
he does is winnow.
Is winnowing like? Isn't that like carving with a knife, like carving wood?
That's whittling.
No,
whittling.
It's actually what I go when we go
Winnowing
fishing.
is
That's
like
what we
with a
use.
scythe, but you just take out everything, right?
No one heard my sweet minnow joke.
I'm sorry. You can repeat it. Would you like to repeat it?
Can't repeat
I'm gonna
jokes.
give you space. Right.
Rule number 1 in comedy. Anyways, continue.
So it is removing the chaff from grain, usually by blowing air.
There you go. So, and there's enough of that hot air here to winnow.
Guys, spoiler alert. That makes a lot of sense.
Oh,
But
man.
so fighting under Empress Zerastia, and they're coming on this kind of battlefield, and they're coming up, and Zerastia comes into a one-on-one battle with the Winnower, and
seen from afar, right? Like,
yeah.
So what I loved about this is like you have all these moments in these where, like, oh, okay, like it's the big fight, and we're gonna watch the two, and it's usually the character you're following is in this big fight. And this is like, what does it look like from somebody who's just in the battle line, just grinding it out and seeing this?
Yeah. So Kala's trying to get to, kind of get there to back her up. And there may be some like, they were told to hold, but that's not happening. So she's trying to make the judgments that she can in the moment, to best serve. But in the end, they do not do well. Empress Zerastia falls, and they have to make a retreat. And the kind of closest city that they're not from the city, I don't think. I think they're coming from somewhere else to come together and meet up with other armies of the Lantic Empire, and they're going to somebody else pronounce this word.
Uliashtai.
Wow, nice. What does that translate to in Lantic?
The City of Gears.
Nice.
Henceforth, we will call it the City of Gears.
If we could just pause a moment, I really like the description of Empress Zerastia, because she was described as having armor that was steel and gold, which you had kind of mentioned before and will come up again later. But it was interlaced armor that had the steel and gold together. And then it was talking about the shield and the sword and how it was an ancient art. And I think that's also a metaphor for how this story kind of plays out as well. So that was a really cool like foreshadowing of what's going on with the story, in my opinion.
Sure. Is it also a metaphor how she got her back straight up broken? Boom.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, exactly. Actually.
No.
You breaking the backs of the laborers of the city.
Well, I mean, I guess if you want to stretch it, you could say she broke her spine, right? So the steel in her spine was broken, but then the gold was the lightning bolt going up from her body when she was called to Sigmar. So boom.
I knew you'd have something. But yeah, that's also a fun little tidbit in that she actually gets reforged. So like this sort of illustrates the time frame that we're dealing with as well. Is that Sigmar at least has the idea of what he's going to be doing with souls.
And nobody else does down here.
Yeah,
Like nobody
that's true.
knows what just happened. They saw that lightning zoom up, but like, what was that all about? So.
Actually, and this is maybe a different conversation for another time, but like even now, does anybody know what that lightning is? Like, do the regular people of the, like today, I mean, whatever today is, but like, do they know when someone gets yanked?
No.
Yeah.
No,
Are
but
you-
I would,
so
I would bet
who-
a lot of the chaos forces that have fought against them at this point, understand.
Get an idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, does Corgus Cole kind of talk about that with Vandus? How he was stolen from him in the first book?
Oh yeah, well, his when Vandus was the blacksmith fella,
Mhm. Yep.
he escaped somehow. So
Sure. And then presumably, I mean, we're going far afield, but Arcan probably knows too. He's running his hands through a lightning bolt.
Once you see it a few times and then see the Stormcast, you put two and two together, right?
Sacred
But
geometry.
this is interesting. Timeline is just knowing that the Anvil of Apotheosis is clanging before the gates of Azyr are shut.
Well, and another interesting point here is that we're talking about Sigmar, we're talking about the lightning, we're talking about reforging, right? But Scylla talks about the god who no longer listens, right? She refuses to pray to the god who no longer answers.
Sure.
He doesn't say who that is yet, but yeah, so that's a very important part of her character. She's like,
Sigmar-
this is a terrible situation. We're totally losing. There's nothing we can do. The rallying cry is always, we will save every Lantian that we can, right? And so they fight on until the empress dies, and then the banner bearer Ardahir is like, we need to go back, and she's like, no, we need to save every Lantic soldier, and he says, there are none left. There is no one left to save, and that's when they choose to retreat, right?
Yep, and this will be there's some repetition here, and if you'll allow, we'll see it again. We'll bring it up and but at the end, I think this repetition is important.
Sure, please do. Hey, let's talk about character number 2. Who do we meet next?
Kazlan.
This is probably my favorite. I talked about Scylla, but I just want to point. This is probably one of my favorite scenes. Maybe it's in the top 5 of any of the scenes in any book.
Of any book ever?
Of the Age of Sigmar books.
Oh, I mean, even so, that's
four
actually
legs, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad is another one.
Sure. It ranks right up there. Well, it sounds like this is one of Eric's favorite scenes. Who wants to take the scene away from Eric and steal his joy?
I'm giving it. You're not taking it. I'm giving it.
No, I'm just leading. So I didn't even read it. So.
Go, Paul.
All right. So Kazlan is a member of the Gold Order. The really cool thing they talk about is that they're basically in this walled city. We are in the city of Gears, right? So at this point, it's just kind of like, yep, it is the city of Gears. You know that they're going to.
That's what he says. Yep.
Uliashtai is where they're coming from, but you're introduced to the city itself not by an introduction to the buildings, not by an introduction to the walls, but you're introduced to it by the purview of Kazlan here, and Kazlan is here in standing on the walls, and then there's more of apprentice types that are in front of him. And what they are doing is they are weaving or singing these arcane geometries, these perfect geometries into the magic, and they are making this perfect geometrical structure that is embodied through magic that is protecting the city itself. And basically, it's this impenetrable shell that is sung into existence by the Gold Order, and every time the Chaos attacks, they just sing the barrier into existence and reinforce it while the attack is going on, and then Chaos goes away, comes back 2 weeks later. They've been doing this over and over and over again.
Aaron, what does it look like to you?
To me, it looks like a lot of math. No, it looks like, if you guys ever saw Doctor Strange, when he does all this stuff, and then the shields pop up and punches it, and there's a whip. Anyways, it's very reminiscent of the magic in Doctor Strange.
I agree.
I feel like it's.
I was put on the spot. I really overdid that.
I feel like it's Biodome with Pauly Shore. It's that geodesic dome, right? But made out of gold.
It's all geodesic. Well, we all know how that goes.
Totally, dude.
Yeah.
It's pretty legit. And as you guys would expect, there's that big protective dome, and it lasts forever. And that's the end of the story. Everybody lives happily.
Yay!
Well, I think, if you look at the Malign Portents graphics and you see those kind of circles and lines running through those graphics, like that feels like a piece of that. Concentric circles, somewhat off-centered lines running through them, connecting to other circles, and then in the Malign Portent stuff, what's the new Stormcast guy, Lord Ordinator. His job in building things is to look at the sacred geometries and build according to those to help strengthen and whatnot. And so this is
the same geometries.
I would assume geometry is geometry unless it's algebra.
I don't know much about algebra.
And so
trigonometry.
And so I mean, just it's another place it pops up, and it talks about these basically. Like the other thing is the idea of ley lines. Or like that there's these connections, or we go back to some of the Sylvaneth in their pathways, and how like there's just these ley lines of magic that run through things. All those things could be connected.
As ley lines do.
As ley lines do it all the time. They cannot. As far as I know, in my experience.
Oh man, we're getting phases from David.
Are you surprised by this?
We're just making it worse.
So when we talk about Castland, he's basically on a node of this ley line, and he talks about the apprentices are more of the smaller nodes, right? Like, so they're set up in this geometrical pattern as they are singing this geometrical dome into existence that is impenetrable, right? And then what happens?
Impenetrable.
Chaos.
Great. That's a great explanation. Really explains what happened.
Top to bottom.
So what happens is, I mean, he thinks that it's impenetrable. He thinks they can hold out forever. He's confident in, as long as the geometries are sound. But there's something that seems to have been woven of magics.
Woved, I think it is.
Wove that start affecting the ley lines.
Weaved.
And he doesn't sense it until he starts seeing the ley lines warp and shift and change. And it's super interesting that kind of the idea, again, reading some things about sieges, is that sometimes when you're trying to siege something, you start from way back where you can't be noticed or where you can't be hit by the arrows or by the anti-siege stuff, right? You start far enough back that you're protected, and then you work your way towards maybe the wall. Maybe you're building a ramp, so you start way at the back and you build it up. And so it's kind of felt like that to me in hindsight, of just like they start kind of way outside of where Castellan and the other Gilded Order can like sense them, and they start working this magic kind of probably on a ley line that or sacred geometry that's not connected or something, or far enough away that they're whatever, and then they start bringing it closer to them, and by the time it gets there, it's strong enough, it's powerful enough to just warp what they're working on. And so just you get the sense that this has been coming, and they just didn't see it.
Sure.
Who's leading these people?
The winner. Oh no, it's not the winner here. Blood tongue. Got your cat.
Proud of that one. So the
winner for some more aging.
Yeah.
So Winnower's not working alone, as you might expect. Like they're dealing with these threats on multiple fronts, and another chaos. I think he's like a sorcerer lord or something equivalent to that. Who's this Skane Blood Tongue, and he's got 100 chaos sorcerers in his employ, and so they're more the magical firepower of this particular chaos invading horde, and who better to take down the sacred geometries? Did you guys get a sense that it was like the apprentices' fault, like their experience, like lack of experience, is what like led to the dome falling, or did I just make that up?
I mean,
I personally didn't get that sense, but
all right, I'm making it up. Cool.
I mean, the front line, it's kind of like you need a magic user here, you need a wizard here, wizard here, wizard here, wizard here, wizard here, and then what happened is that wave came in, and like those younger wizards who were on that front line connected to the geometries started fading, like getting like like they were falling. And so once you break that pattern, once you break where the users are, it starts the integrity of the whole structure goes away.
Sure.
Right?
I was just looking for an excuse to blame an intern,
I mean,
basically.
it's the kids choir, right? The kids choir, the youth choir.
But we're talking about geometries and stuff like that where like, you know, they can trace bridge collapses back to like, you know, a single bolt shearing and like that sheared off, which failed and stressed this thing. And then it just, you know, ripple effect on and cause a total collapse. And so that's what happens here. So
yeah,
I do like anything that takes I do like anything that takes a magic system and gives you some sense that there's an underlying logic behind it. Like this is working in a particular way. I did a good job of doing that with, you know, it was just more powerful magic. And then they're already pretty, you know, it was like, okay, well, they managed to like the whole sneaking it in from far away. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. From my perspective, what I kind of read into it is that Kazlan was in charge of this section of the defenses, and he was supposed to be making sure that everything was reinforced. But as we talked about before, he was like, no, the geometry is perfect. We're great. Everything is perfect, right? And so he was supposed to watch over these apprentices to make sure that they were good and reinforce them.
Part of a team.
But then, unfortunately, he noticed that it started to bow, but at that point, I feel like it was too late, right? Like, he should have noticed that the sacred geometries are starting to change first. And so, in my opinion, what I read was that Kazlan's inattention led to the apprentices failing. And they failed spectacularly because they just went up in these, like, bolts of fire, basically. They were consumed by the sacred geometries, and then everything fell, right? Like, that's the way I read the book.
I will also say that what I like about your statement, Davey, as far as like there being an underpinning to this type of magic, is that I hope that we see, you know, obviously like chaos magic has different underpinnings, right? Works differently. When we get to Age of Sigmar role play, I hope that there's some magic use that kind of emphasizes different types of magic.
And
so in order to cast this spell, you stand here, Davey. You stand here, Eric. You stand here, Aaron. I'm going to be the apprentice.
That'll be just the right kind of annoying gameplay.
And so Chaos knocks down the entire barrier, and that was the only thing they wanted to do, and they up and left, and that was the end of the book.
No, great. Good job.
Aaron, quit stopping it prematurely.
There's a... Nope. We'll keep going.
So this is an important part for Kazlan's character. Because he says everything was perfect. Everything was great, right? And it failed. So, obviously, this order is imperfect. And he's like, crap, we need to go tell somebody, but, like, there's something wrong here. Everything was perfect. There should have been no failure whatsoever, but everything has failed. So, therefore, my belief system must change, right? Like, there was definitely a conscious choice in him to say the sacred geometries were wrong.
He just jumped to that conclusion real quickly.
He does, and then he says everything is kind of wrong. We need to let loose on these sacred geometries a little bit, right? Because they failed on us. So let's figure out what else we can do.
Right on. And so how does he do that?
He returns to the palace of the Autarch, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, not just him, like everybody, right? Like the walls come down and like people start having to like flee, or does that happen now? I'm pretty sure it does. Like, right? Like that's
at this point the doors were closed, so he convinces them to open the doors first because there's this huge mass of refugees that are outside of the doors.
Sure.
Because the Autarch had decided they were going to shut the city because they didn't want to deal with all of these refugees that were coming in. So they allow in the masses of the refugees of the Lantic Empire to come into the city itself and flee towards the Autarch's palace. So he has to go and let them know that all of a sudden everything has changed, right?
So we'll pinpoint that as another kind of story element where somebody decides to close doors as a point of, hey, this is where we're drawing the line.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, it's also a point of defining their character, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this is as far as we're willing to go.
Well, and then, and as you said, Kazlan goes back to the tower to try and figure out what's happening with the higher ups.
And who's left? Who's there?
Nobody.
Ain't nobody.
Nobody.
Not
Ain't
much.
nobody there.
One man, Livius, awakes amongst the dead. So this royal wakes up in the palace. The palace has been closed off. And we learn now, we haven't really heard anything else about it, but the palace has been quiet because a plague has overtaken the royal families in the palace. And everywhere he goes, just bodies laying everywhere. And he's real sick. And he can hear the voices, he's hearing the voices of his mother, saying that he's worthless, is messed up, all these sorts of things. And as he's staggering around, he finds a family heirloom, this sword, Widowbane. And he'd been told he's not worthy of it, but now I'm worthy now. There's no one else. I have to be worthy, right? So.
To be clear, question about Widowbane does that mean it's the bane of widows? Like he's just rolling around like hacking up widows? Like that doesn't seem very impressive.
Right.
That's like the most heartless sword ever, right? Like, oh, you just lost your spouse.
I'm not
You're saying widows are weak?
No. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's not what I'm saying. I want to be careful with what I say
that
here.
wasn't what I said either. All right.
Guys, random name generator.
Sure.
.org.
Well,
Fair enough.
Good diversion out of the name Widowbane, but he goes and realizes that he's the only member of the royal family, possibly the only member of the royal family left alive. And he's like, well, does that mean I'm in charge now? I don't know. Like, what? And as he's trying to figure this out, the people who have fled through the city, including a cool element where they escape, like they buy time by running through the districts that shift. We saw this before in the Realm Gate Wars where they rotate with gears and such, right?
Yeah, like a Harry Potter tower or something.
Sure, right.
Yeah, well,
but the natives like know how that goes, and so pursuing armies are like, oh, this is super confusing. Like we're getting all turned around, and so the fleeing refugees buy themselves some time, get outside his doors, and he decides to open them up. And much to the dismay of Sulla and Kazlan, there's not a powerful royal force inside to take over. There's just one sickly looking, weak-willed individual. So.
Likes hacking up widows, apparently.
Well, then, real quick, when Kazlan was in the tower, he found something.
Right, we missed that, didn't we? So,
which is fine, but he finds, is it locked away? It's like in some sort of like
it's like in the deepest
safe,
vault.
in some
spell vault, yeah.
And so he manages. He's not supposed to go in there usually because he's not high enough level. But since nobody else is there, now he's spider leg number 8 in the building.
Now who's the highest level guy?
Now who's 8 legs, and
level 4 Amber Wizard or Gold Wizard.
Yep. And one of the things that happens when he grabs this thing is he feels that it has a ton of power and a ton of potential. He kind of says, "Hey, maybe I can use this," and it starts he can kind of see what went wrong before. He starts getting a little bit of information, can see clearly some things. It maybe starts to speak to him a little bit. You can get a sense that this was locked away. This is maybe too powerful.
So this is like a metal staff, right? Like steel or gold or something because we're in the realm of metal, right?
I don't remember that sense. I don't remember the description that clearly.
Oh, sorry. It was a crystal staff.
There you go. I wondered, metal. First thing that came to my head, is it one of the 8 Lamentations? Maybe not. But
do we know all of them?
It'd be really cool to hide one of the 8 Lamentations in a book that's not named 8 Lamentations. I mean, how cool would that be?
I think Reynolds probably has like a TMT.
Yeah, he probably has that locked down.
Yeah. I mean, we did read about one in a book that was not labeled one of the 8 Lamentations. So,
Auction of Blood.
But Paul brings up a good point, though. Like whether or not it's not made of metal. It's not an artifact of this era. Like the fact that it's not made of metal here, but rather made of crystal, I think is actually probably a pretty telling
could be
tidbit factoid. Well, and then jumping back, so if we want to hit back to Livius real quick, it's interesting that like all his royals were taken out by a plague. They don't explicitly say, but the winnower from before kind of comes off as a fairly not Cornish, but coronate, whatever the adjective verb is that or form of that is, type of dude. Blood Tongue comes across as a real Zinchian, and then lo and behold, all the royals were killed by a plague. I feel like we got a lot of different chaos elements working in conjunction here to eliminate The Lantic Empire.
So no, it's early on in the Age of Chaos when they're still getting along.
We're all best buds. Yeah.
Working together. Hey, let's do this together, guys.
Sure. I thought that was fun.
No, I like that. So then, but at the point Davey was bringing up, Livius, Castellan, and Sola had all met up because they have an idea of what to do next. They're going to escape the city. Someone want to take it from there?
There is an underway that, and it has been mentioned already. Sola, I think.
Underwear?
Underway.
Sola. You said.
Oh man.
Go ahead.
Sola,
Stop interrupting Davey. Let him talk. He's good.
All right, so there's a dwarven underway. We're familiar with this idea from the world that was, right? But it's a massive underground passageway, and they're going to use this to try and escape the city. That's what it's designed for. It needs a special effort to open it. I think only a person of royal blood can open it, and so Castellan has to talk Livius into doing it, even though Livius is like, "Oh, it might kill me. Like I haven't trained at this. It takes a lot of energy, whatever." And Castellan is able to use this artifact he has to exert influence over the Emperor. Sola sees this and is like, "Whoa, hey, like, I saw what you did. Uncool. Like, the Emperor, he's the Emperor's the Emperor. You can't bend him to your will. And if you ever try that again or try that on me, like, we're gonna have problems." But they're gonna make this escape. Also notable is that the Lofnir Lodge, some fire slayers, were thought to have betrayed the Lantic Empire, sold them out. Now, again, we haven't seen this actually happen. This is Solo's perception of it, so it very well could have happened. We've seen implied in other stories that fire slayers could potentially mercenary out to the Chaos forces, and I imagine if the Urgold price was right, they might do it.
Wait, fire slayers are untrustworthy? That doesn't track.
So they're going to use this to escape. But the problem is, at some point, they're going to have to close the gates to the palace to prevent pursuit. And so all of a sudden, we're in that same situation. Somebody has to make a decision to close the gate and cut people off. And there's a debate between the three of them, and it sits at first. It seems like really just a debate between Sola and Castellan. But Livius, has a role in this too, as the Emperor to make the decision. So they do end up shutting it, hearing the wails of despair from outside, and then going to make their escape.
What's fun about this, and I feel like we might have talked about this in a different setting at a different time, but the idea of how these gates are opened and closed, and how it's necessary that Livius is the one to do it because it requires a certain royal bloodline to do so. This whole concept is never really explained or walked through, which may rub some people the wrong way, but I loved that I didn't get my hand held through this, and that just we just took for granted by the fact that this guy's a royal and he can he's not even metal, he's controlling maybe it is metal, I don't know, but gear shift doors and things, and just because of his blood, we got the super powerful wizard, especially because he's souped up with a crystal staff, and even he can't do the things that the Emperor can do because of his bloodline. And this is barely even referenced, or barely even delved into. Everybody just assumes that this is the case, which I like. I mean, it's a short story. We don't have time to walk through every little detail as to how this magic works. We're in the mortal realms, baby. Anything can happen. So it was cool.
Yeah.
I bet our favorite vampires would love to taste this blood.
Oh, sure. Well, unless it has a real high iron count.
Or it's still diseasy. But this escape route, not only is it escaping from the city, but they have a chance to make it to a particular realm gate, which could get them to the safety of Azyr. So this is the desperate plan, and they're writing off the Lantic Empire by doing so, right there. Yep. And this is part of what makes it hard, is are we giving up on this empire that is who it is? And they say, well, it's already, there's nothing to give up, it's gone.
There was another thing I forgot about when Castellan goes up into a tower. There's all these metal rods sticking out of the wall or something to that effect, and usually you can hear them vibrating because they carry messages from different parts of the empire. And in this case, they were all silent except one, and it was basically like I imagine like a beep 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 beep, like some sort of Morse code type of
they
thing.
read it out.
Yeah,
It
like
says,
what does it say?
was it, the equivalent of oh shit, get to Azyr.
Yeah. So it was like the reason that tower was empty is because the call came out that everyone needed to get back to Azyr, and I think it's implied that a bunch of people went to Azyr already, like that they already escaped out through. Again, somebody made a decision about to close the gate and to save themselves, right?
Well, and did Kazlan know that this was going on?
No, not while he was out on the wall.
I don't think so.
Nope. So Kazlan wasn't told. Like, people knew this.
And he was number 4 on this, 5 on this on
legs.
legs.
4 or 5. Not sure. Yes, this is a big deal, right?
Only like 6, 7, and 8 knew.
This is the most nonsensical scale that we have held on to.
I mean,
yes!
But to our previous feeling like we need logic underpinnings, I mean, it's the best we've got.
Well, I mean, is it fair?
We will see.
Okay, so they shut the gate. They boogie down to the underway. That's about it, and they escape, and that's the end of the book.
God dang it!
Except they lose a ton of people when they close the gate, like mothers and sisters and blah 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 are also.
Oh, why do you gotta humanize them, man? Like,
well, because
chaff.
It says in the book we don't leave any Lantics behind, and they leave the Lantics behind, right?
Yep.
What they should have done is like excommunicate them before they shut the gate, and they're like, "It's no big deal."
So there's an advantage to going through the underway.
Yeah,
is that it's faster to get to the gate than if Blood Tongue were to be traveling over the hills and the lands.
Correct.
Yeah, but it's not an exclusive gate. You can get there the same way. It's just a longer time to get there.
Yep.
Right. And it leads into the lodge of the very Fireslayer clan that betrayed them.
The gate does, or the tunnel does.
The tunnel
does.
It leads to the gate and the lodge at the same time. Like, I think they're at the same general.
The gate is in the lodge, which is in the tunnel, which is in the city.
You done it. Yeah, good job. You painted a picture with your words.
As they're making their escape, Kazlan becomes aware that that Blood Tongue is somehow keeping pace with them, right? And so I was like, oh, that's impossible. Like, it would take days to cross the hills. Like, well, with chaos, nothing is impossible, says Kazlan, which is a worrying statement coming from somebody.
What are you worried about?
And they say, well,
and real quick to unpack that a little bit. I mean, we've gone from him being like the sacred geometries are perfect, invincible, to him, kind of getting that staff and starting to think a little bit outside of that box and accept some other truths. So that as the step of like nothing's impossible for chaos seems like it's, and he's done some things to try and control other people, and do some things. So I mean, it seems like he's although we know that the songs are what kind of can bolster people, so maybe that's not. But I have this feeling that this is kind of part of the unraveling that leads to that kind of what we're getting to. So him using magic, him opening his mind up to what's possible outside of the sacred geometries, kind of exonerating a little bit or admiring the power of chaos a little bit. There's some things there, maybe.
Part of what he also detects is that Blood Tongue's traveling with a small force. Not sure how small, but a small force. Yeah. And Sola says, we got a chance here. Like, what if we cut the head of this? Like, we're not getting the winnower, but we might get this guy. And with that, his pursuit falls apart. Knowing that these chaos forces are frequently might descend to infighting, lose all that. So she develops this plan where she's gonna launch an ambush. Livius says, what kind of emperor would I, Kazlan has said, well, they're going to go to their deaths. And Livius is saying, well, it's an honorable death that they're hoping to do in defense of their empire and their emperor and the remaining people here to buy them time to escape. What kind of an emperor would I be to deny him that? And he's so miserable that he's like, maybe I should join them. Maybe I could put an end to this awfulness by joining in. But there's a problem with this plan.
Yeah. It's exactly what they wanted. It's a trap.
Can we put images up?
Yeah, I'll get right on that.
Sure, please do. I know you're not real busy.
Since you got the alarm, I'll get the photo. But yeah, it turns out they go after this, and it seems like they're gonna. So a bunch of the Lantic warriors, the more well armed ones, obviously underneath Sola, go up to attack them. They attack them head on, and Sola somehow is able to kind of find a path to climb up above. How they were able to get them stay so close is that chaos technology of flight. There's a little bit of just some harpies. Is it harpies? Furies?
Yes.
Furies and a zinc disc that blood tongue. I wanted to say meat tongue, but
Sure.
whatever.
Meatloaf.
Meatloaf. Now I want to sing a song. But so he's flying on a zinc disc, and she climbs up on these like metallic metal shard type spires and gets above him. This dramatic jump, and comes down on top of him with a sword, and he turns around and with a smug like smile of "I knew you were there." What a jerk!
He does. It has like so slowly the Chaos Sorcerer opened his outstretched hand, a ball of roiling balefire glowing between his spread fingers. Then, like a doting grandfather about to share a secret, he winked at Sola.
So they're fighting and losing because they got goaded into their trap, and the rest of them go through their own gate, and it's cool.
Sure, that's the end of the story. No, that's my jam, man.
Ploy. Come on.
I didn't say the end.
So Luvius decides I can't let them die alone. Leave no Lantic behind, right? And so
he actually gives an inspiring speech to the people. He says, "There lies safety. There's the gate. They made it all the way to the gate. There's safety, and there our comrades are fighting and dying for us. I'm gonna go, with them. Or I'm gonna go fight along their side. Are you coming with me?"
Yeah, and then Kazlan's like, "Yeah, it's all great," and then they all die. And that's the end of the book, right?
Okay, now we're all taking it. Like, it's not even fun anymore.
So but Kazlan, who's been this like, get in the gate, everybody keep going, get in the gate. We have to accept some casualties. It's practical. Get in the gate. He also is kind of like, yes, we are Lantic, and he kind of shows that deep down inside, he also feels the need to fight, right? And preserve a little bit more.
And he does say, "I can hardly go through the realm gate alone. What would I tell Sigmar?"
That's a great line. And then he unleashes his magic, and it's this all like gold sacred geometries stuff that's protecting them, right? That's exactly what happens, right?
What?
No, that's not what happens. All this Zingian magic shows up and starts mutating the Lantic soldiers that are fighting.
Well, it's so to explain, he gives into the staff, right? To kind of harken it back, just like, so he's going in, he's desperate. And instead of, he would love the time to figure out, and he talks about it, like, I wish I had the time to unlock the secrets of the staff, to engage its powers without getting lost in its power, like without getting, caught up in it. But I have no time. And so almost instead of like it being a planned thing, he just lets it flow through him. And, he does a few things. He puts up a shield. He does use the sacred geometries to put up kind of like a pyramid over the Lantic troops, right?
What shape was it?
Pyramid.
Oh, pyramid. Okay, gotcha.
Pyramid.
That's what it was.
And so he does use some of that, but then it starts warping a little bit as he's using it more forcefully. It starts off as a straight line, but again it's zigzaggy and it gets twisted a little bit and it's curved, and he's like, well, maybe it's okay. Maybe chaos, like the truth is in both chaos and order, he's definitely like these sacred geometries are kind of like, it's not a rule, it's more of a guideline, and so you definitely see the sense that he's certainly got good intentions, but he is his resolve is crumbling fast, and he's getting influenced like
nobody's
spoiled milk.
I don't.
influenced like spoiled milk.
So what all the kids are saying.
You are super hip and cool.
You said it.
I'll say it again. What? So do they win? Do they lose? Like I'm enthralled. Keep telling me this story.
So I mean, you go for
They
it.
kill Bloodtongue because Luvius decides he's gonna not be a baby, and he goes and he slaughters Bloodtongue because the sword Widowbane is a magical sword.
And Bloodtongue turned out to be a widow.
Ah, you beat me to it. That's right.
Oh yeah, there you go.
A not so tough one.
And then they kill all the harpies, and they're like, "Yeah, we did it, and we can go through the realm gate and go see Sigmar, and everything is great, right?"
I mean, it is a cool fight where like all three of them get involved. Sola is like straight up bear hugging this guy, you know, and I'm like, she's just gone, desperate. But yeah, so they defeat him. Like, okay, we did it. We're living. Like, let's go. Like we upheld the Lantic honor. Let's go back to Azyr.
And they go knocking on the door.
Yeah.
And then they get a little message that says, sorry, Sigmar's not home right now. Please leave a message.
Knocking on heaven's door.
Oh, in a very literal sense. Actually, that song is very appropriate. Yeah. Door's locked. Can't get through is
Nope.
the gist of it.
The sword breaks. Sola's sword literally breaks in half.
Oh, sure. Too true. And what's everybody's reaction? How would you react to something like that?
Well, Calson, so Sola pushes off the wall. Livius is not understanding right away, and Calson's like, the realm gate, he's barred it. And Livius, I don't understand. Who do you think? Sola didn't even bother to hide her anger. So, it's a little bit of, they're all having these various reactions, like lack of understanding or disbelief or anger, all these understandable reactions. Like
the steps of... the 7 steps of there you go.
Yeah. And Sola goes like scream rose from deep within her chest, like she smashes. So this is where it's not that it breaks, like she just starts swinging at the realm gate and breaks her sword. This sword that she's held in the name of Sigmar for so long, she breaks it, battering at this realm gate.
And like her sword, thus her spirit is broken.
Right.
And her faith in Sigmar.
And her faithful standard bearer, Ardahir, which was, for those who didn't get it, that was Paul's pun at the start. Yeah.
Everybody got it. Everybody dug it.
He's trying to counsel, like, okay, like let's figure out another way, or like what's our thing, what's our move forward here. And then the dawn breaks, and all along the ridge is the winnower and his many, many legions, including banners that used to be part of the Lantic. Like there's clearly allies that have turned. So if you want a moment of despair, does it get any worse than that desperate hope that you fought so hard for, made it to the gate, did everything you could, had this improbable victory over the Chaos Sorcerer, and now your last hope is closed off. And not only that, but there's those in front of you that have betrayed you. Pretty rough moment.
It was a pretty awesome line where for a moment, she's like, they've all come to rescue me, right? Like she sees the banner, she sees the armor, and she's like, they're all here. They've all come to fight. And then she sees the blood spatters, and then she sees the chaos workings, and then she goes, they've all turned. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they go speak to the winnower.
Yeah, Livia says, Livia says, I think he wants to talk. And her sergeant, again, trying to be the wise. He says, we don't want to hear anything that guy has to say. And then I like this moment. So I was like, maybe he wants to surrender. Like, a little bit of that, nuts, right? Anyway, so yeah, go ahead, Paul.
I like that line a lot.
So they walk up and they talk to the winnower, and he's like, well, what are you doing? And he's like, well, we're fighting to defend the remnants of the Lantic Empire. And the winnower stretches out his hand to his army and says, I have more remnants of the Lantic Empire here than you do there.
Yeah.
Who are you defending?
Yeah.
And and that basically breaks their spirit, and they go, what are we defending? Like, I mean, Kazlan's obviously gone a little bit over to the far side, right? Because he has the Cian staff. But it turns out that Sulla and Kazlan and Luvius all are like, you know what? This is the truth. This is the Lantic Empire. If we're going to not leave one left behind, this is how we do it. But Sulla's still like, but I want to kill you, Widower. Like, you're my enemy. You've destroyed everything I stand for. And he's like, great. So does every single person behind me. Get in line.
Yeah.
Bring it.
And then he
This
says,
is how
like,
I make you strong enough.
yeah, he says, if you really want to kill the followers of chaos, come over on my side. You'll kill more. You'll have the chance to kill more followers of chaos than you ever will if you stay on your side, which got some validity. But I didn't want to just blitz by, like when the Winnower takes his helmet off. You guys remember this piece where like,
Yep.
it says his voice was surprisingly soft. He removed his helmet, revealing an unexpectedly mild face, small and round-cheeked, with a weak chin and a widow's peak of thinning brown hair.
This guy, right?
He's a widow. He's
It
a
was
widow.
Aaron.
More
He's
like
one
what Sulla
widows.
would have expected from a clerk than a bloody-handed warlord. And so it's another thing of like, there's this idea of like the banality of evil, like when and we don't see that a lot in Warhammer, in Age of Sigmar, like that evil is represented by these chaos gods, but here, and usually it's this big twisted, monstrous looking thing with the demonic axe and horns and yada yada yada. And here's a pretty normal looking guy, and that.
Do you just yada 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 corn?
Maybe
That's one of their war cries. Yada 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 yada.
Cool.
No, bring it back.
But this idea of like, I was expecting when this helmet came off, he'd just be this, incomprehensible monster, but he's just a guy. And then that makes it all the easier to talk to him, which makes him all the more dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Well, and kind of looking, putting that point on, again, put points on all these things. We've got these kind of like, we leave the rabble outside, the shanty town outside the castle. We're going to close the door. Well, then maybe we'll open it, and there's this big point of like, do we shut it or not? And that kind of made people upset. But then, at all these points that they're making these small compromises, and that are kind of being selfish, and they kind of by closing all those doors and making those compromises, they open the door to doubt. They open the door to kind of justifying, well, who are you being loyal to? A god or a leadership that wasn't loyal to you, to a bloodline that wasn't loyal, and so I think there's again that juxtaposition that Sigmar was doing the same. I mean, it's sound logic, but it creates a lot of room to breed that disloyalty or to come off as to be seen as to be interpreted as being disloyal to the people that were depending on you.
To bring up a point on that, actually, so they keep talking about which doors they want to open and close. Like you said, it's come up a few times, and they've always been on the right side of the door. Like they've always been on the safe side, and they can pick and choose like whether or not to open it. This is the first time they've been on the wrong side of the door, and someone chose to close it on them, which is kind of a weird juxtaposition, which I never really caught before.
Right, and they've subtly been on the wrong side before, right? Like Sulla feels that her prayers aren't being answered anymore. That Sigmar, so like she's had some hints, like some foreshadowing of this to come. Similarly with Kazlan, when he realizes that the signal's gone out, like, hey, run back to Azyr, and like, well, nobody told me, so they haven't. This is the first time it's been concrete, like we are out. But it's been hinted at before, and so I think that maybe makes it hit home all the more. I would say this conversation with the Chaos Warlord goes on for several pages, and it's just about worth the price of admission here. Like it's really a cool moment. One of my most enjoyable bits of dialogue. I'll jump on with Eric here in the Black Library so far. As far as dialogue goes, like back and forth, we don't always have a ton of that, particularly not from opposite factions like Chaos speaking with Order. And even then, when we usually have it, it's in the heat of battle and they're snapping things at each other. And here, there's time for some discussion back and forth. And
What about that one book when the one guy was like "roar" at the one guy? Like that was real. Like it put me in the mood.
Or yada 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 blah.
But this conversation is one of the things I enjoyed most about this whole piece of fiction.
Well, and especially because how convincing it is. Like he's right at every step. Like it's man, I just got turned to chaos somehow. Like surprisingly.
And here's a question for you. In the beginning, he thinks that it's logic that will save him, when in the end, it's logic that dooms him.
That turns him over.
Yep.
And then the book ends.
Dang it. It does. No, really. No.
We're close, dear listeners. We're close.
All right, so he's standing there, and the winnower is talking to them, and then the winnower brands them. Right?
Yeah.
They accept his promise, and he brands them. And then they turn around to be like, "Hey guys, we got some great news. We don't have to fight these guys. This is great." And then what happens?
You tell us.
They.
Oh, you didn't know, did you? Oh.
I'm sorry. I'm hard of hearing. Can you say that again? He leads the charge to go and fight back because they saw them go talk to the winnower and trade sides, and they're like, "No, this is not who we are."
Yep.
And the three of them are forced to kill the remnants of the refugees.
And like that, they're like, "Oh, these guys are the enemies."
Exactly.
We gave them a chance. Man, they made their choice. Oops.
Yeah.
And they closed the door on them.
Yep. Metaphorical door. But like, I mean, the refugees did attack first. Like don't start shit there when we
totally right. You're totally right. But no, I mean, but that slow justification and ability to kind of turn them in such kind of small ways, almost like a gear slowly turning. And then, they turn on the very people they spent the entire book trying to rescue.
Well, and here's the awful part about it. Like, because this book has been following this like kind of horrible logic as it goes along, and they're like, there's our followers, and they're hurling stuff at us, and they won't accept us anymore. Like, what do we do now? And they look back and they're like, well, the winnower's just gonna slaughter them. Like maybe we should do it. So it's like it would be a mercy. Like, so they're saying like, well, now the most merciful thing for us to do is for us to kill him. Livy said, I don't know if we can. And they say we don't abandon our own. And so this logic is now, we don't abandon our own. We're gonna go, finish off these refugees. Man,
corrupted geometries.
Jeez, yeah.
That is cool.
I would argue all geometry is corrupted.
A squared plus B squared does not equal C squared. That's wrong. So,
Pythagoras can go straight to hell.
And what's well, I was going to say, and we get another instance with is it Ardahir, the second in command of Solas?
Yeah.
Reforged.
Lightning to the sky. Lightning comes down, it takes him away.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's not, but I wish I knew like who he ends up being. I mean, that is to say, I'm sure he doesn't actually have a Stormcast right now, but still.
Yeah.
So then the three of them march back towards the horde, and they're cheered. The winnower's horde cheers their arrival, and that's where the book ends.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really end. No.
Well, and I mean, some other interesting things. Just thinking about like, those logics, like that Castellan would have time to unpack the mysteries of the staff. Like when a moment goes, like, we'll never have time. And he and Sola can become the hero that she's saying there are no more heroes, and hey, there's heroes. And then the other
thing with Sola is my God doesn't listen, and the winnower says the chaos gods always listen.
It's a BS line. It's a BS line.
The god who doesn't listen to the gods who listen out, right? Illuvius, all he wants to do is set down this burden, right? Yeah. And the winnower is like, you're just another soldier, right? You can lay the burden.
He doesn't even say that. He's like, what do I get? And he's like, nothing.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to have responsibility. You don't have to you don't have to do anything. You just get to be done.
Oh, I want that.
All right, Luvius.
Yeah. So
hacking up widows.
Well, and that's really it, right? Like when they talk about the winnower and he describes him, he literally has a widow's peak, right? So Luvius is standing face to face with someone who he has the power to kill.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
And instead
One
of
blow.
killing him, he talks to him. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So there it is.
Yep.
But one of the interesting things that I thought was not put into the book, but really interesting, is they obviously have this Fireslayer Lodge, right?
Yeah.
Where they're walking through the Fireslayer Lodge and they're betrayed by the dwarves.
Yeah.
And they're very clear that the Dwarven were betrayed them, and how could they betray them? And they were in this alliance for forever, and they don't talk about the betrayal or what actually happened, just that they did betray them. But not a word is said about the Caradron Overlords. And the Caradron Overlords are literally up in the sky watching this happening and doing nothing.
Yeah.
So they have betrayal from below and betrayal from above.
Yeah, because this was, I mean, they would be getting ready to exist at this time. Like these are the opening the Age of Chaos is what drives them higher and higher to the mountaintops until they got nothing left to do. So
I would agree. KO may not exist yet. That whole culture.
Okay. Well, there goes my point.
Yep.
I made that point like an hour ago.
We got him, guys. Good job.
Ha! Wrong.
So
Aaron, play the buzzer again.
You're at negative points now. So you owe all of us points.
But yeah, I mean, and so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. I think that the book fits a really interesting spot in the timeline, as you were saying, Aaron, is that it like it's as that moment when Sigmar closes the door and how it affects, like, one, how does it chaos has this surge of strength then from all these doubting faithful that just didn't make it in time, right?
Yeah.
And
so
how
you're saying
easy
whenever
it was.
Sigmar closes a door, he opens a winnower?
I love it.
You're in the green again. You're in the black. Good job.
I'll abstain from voting on that one.
I feel like the power of our I feel like angels got wings and fairies, are flying more.
And then my last question is, do you think this Fireslayer Lodge became Caradron Overlords? Do you think this is the beginning of the Exodus?
No? I don't.
There's
don't.
Metal,
well,
stuff, right?
But there's no line saying that Fireslayers become KO.
Right.
Oh, no.
It was Warden Kings and Dispossessed, like the more traditional. As far as we know. Go ahead.
I just don't think it's a line you can assume. Some Fireslayers may have, joined them.
Possibly.
Like Tom Lyons, Fireslayers.
Sure,
maybe
sure.
you joined them.
Canon.
But it feels like in a lot of stories, there's a lot of grudges against Dwarden, which I feel like steals the whole grudge thing from Dwarden. Everyone else should be just like, kind of sucked, and then leave it at that. That'd be more on the nose.
You lost me. Who's your favorite character? Who's your MVP? Guys? Tell me about who you identified with. You guys knew I was going to ask. How do you not have an answer to this question?
I think it's, as we've talked about it, I think that's changed a lot. I mean, my favorite, I think, was Kazlan. Starting from the geometries and kind of his kind of story arc, going from everything needs to be this, and this, lines perfect, whatever, to very much being like, there's probably some truth here in this, in the chaos. There's truth in the waviness. There's, and that whole, like, certainly the staff was a part of that corruption. The environment was part of that corruption. But I thought there was just like to the end, even, like he came around too, like, I need to do pragmatic things. I'm felt shunted by the people who, were supposed to, be at the top and, blah, to him making a lot of those the same decisions as those people who are, the eight-leggers. So I thought he was a pretty complex character and had some really cool powers.
Yeah, I think
shot magic and lasers.
I liked him. I think his was the most clear character arc. You could very clearly see how he started from point A and he ended up at point B. And so, like, because from what you've just described, like, I can see that.
Did you say there was a geometry to that story arc?
A parabolic arc looks like this. Yeah, he does. Paul, who's your MVP?
Empress Arasia.
Tell me why.
I thought she was just a really cool character. Kind of talked about it before, how she had the steel and the gold armor. She was just a very independent character. I like the idea of the fact that, like, everybody knew that there was nothing left, right? and she still went, and she was at the head of a phalanx of Empire Knights when she went to go do this. And just like, it was cool to have a character that was doing this epic battle, but you didn't get to be there. You just got to watch the epicness of it, right? There was no small movements. There were no small gestures. It was all epic and writ large. And then she was taken up, right? Like, that's just a really cool way to write a character. Let's
Sure.
just put it that way.
Would you say that she was the ruler of cool?
I don't know. Are we talking metric? Are we talking inches? I'm not sure.
Oh, so
Geometry.
You turned it right around. I mean, I didn't think you
Would you say that had she not been taken up as a Stormcast, that she might have become a Caradron Overlord?
Well, it depends on how far that lightning bolt went, right?
Would you say she was always a Caradron Overlord?
Maybe. I mean, she's got the silver and gold thing going on. She's got the sword and the shield and no, not at all.
Davey, the question that's been burning in my mind is, who is your MVP and why?
I'll go with Sola, and that is because I found her identifiable, or easy. Well, easy is maybe the wrong word, but you could identify with where, like, we get to her at the end of this long campaign. She's been asked to, like, I mean, warfare is a horrific thing anyway. Warfare against chaos is even more so. And when the end of, like, everything that you have valued is coming about, like, she's been put in some desperate times, and then the rock that she may have counted on for such a long time is no longer there. Sigmar, like, she's been driven to some pretty desperate lengths, and she's still trying to do the valiant thing, doing the right thing. And it's one of those falls that isn't like, it's not like episode 2 Attack of the Clones where, well, I guess I'm going to kill a bunch of kids now, or, whatever movie that happened in. But it was like you could track the progress of how she got where she was. Yeah. And everyone's got their breaking point, right? Like, so I don't know. She just hit it, but it wasn't like snap and done. It was this slow erosion. And so you could see it happening. The wrong things were happening for some of the right reasons. So she just felt like a very human character to me, I guess.
Cool. Right on.
Aaron.
Yeah, my dude was already here because his name makes for some really good puns. You would think naturally if we were going to cover all the characters we like the most, like you would think I would go, what's his name? Livius. But that guy sucked. So, like, that's not my guy at all. I like the dude. I mean, he didn't have the most depth. This already here, he's the standard bearer for Sulla. And I think that's a good job for him because he ends up being real stalwart and sort of steady. Yeah, pretty quintessential. I mean, and yeah, sure, he's one-dimensional because of that, I suppose. But I could definitely put myself in his shoes to sort of see the de-evolution of the three main characters, and sort of I can picture how I would feel sort of looking through his eyes, and especially seeing like the final scene and how he had to, face the degeneracy of what the people he just presumably was following up this whole time. So like you very much could feel for him, and it's hokey, but the idea that like he, for the most part, he went to the same lengths and same troubles that those three did. I mean, I guess he wasn't in charge per se, but like he still faced the same horrors they did, and he was able to stick it out. Just sort of speaks to his character a little bit better.
Yeah, he becomes kind of her trajectory throughout the whole thing. Like he's with it, and very drastic when he starts doubting her, when he starts being like disagreeing with her.
Sure.
You can start to see where the cracks form.
Exactly. And I think as he started realizing, I too was realizing at the same time. Like I'm dumb. I never put two and two together, like the title of the book and like where this was like all going. Like until they turned bad, I wasn't catching it. But I still my doubts grew as his doubts grew.
I can't.
Well, but the other thing.
Go ahead.
The other thing that was really interesting about this book is that it's called Path to Glory, right? And you're like, okay, Path to Glory. It's not called Paths to Glory. I thought one of them was going to turn, not all three. And so when all three of them turned, I was like, oh, okay, like, because we've never read, like, even in the old world, we've never read about three people turning at the same time. It's always about that personal journey. And what's really interesting about this book is that it's about 3 personal journeys, and they all hit the same point at the same time and switch sides at the same time. And that's something we've really not addressed in fiction.
That was the only thing, is that the title didn't seem to fit for me. Maybe I don't have the same concept of the Path to Glory.
Well, it is a reference. The Path to Glory first existed as a reference to Chaos Warbands. Like it's the So I think it was a callback to that.
Yeah, I mean they've subsequently given Path to Glory rules to all the armies, but like I think the first, like David said, I think the first ones are all the Chaos armies.
Yeah.
So I think armed with the title, and then I think as soon as Caslin got to the staff, I was like, my brain kicked over. I was like, oh, I think I might know what's going on here, and I love it, but I'm not sure. I think I remember dropping a message to that effect to the group.
I mean, almost word for word. I think that's what you said. Yeah.
I've got a question. We got time for a couple questions here.
We got questions. Yeah.
So here's something that's interesting to me, and maybe it's because I picking Sola as my MVP, but we talked about her losing faith, and the way the characters in the Mortal Realms interact with and deal with divinity is not the same way that a lot of us today think about it. You know, they're the gods that they pray to and such are, you know, you don't need to like, oh, I just believe, you know, or whatever. It's, you can see these, you could theoretically see them walking by or something like that, right? So like there's more proof of existence, and so but not always, you know. So maybe she hasn't, but the question of like how much is faith, how much their faith needs to be just based on I believe and versus I have proven to me, have had proven to me is one thing. And then but also these pantheons are made up like more like these Greek pantheons that where they have flaws and they make mistakes. They're not omniscient, they're not omnipotent, they're very powerful, very knowledgeable. But when you believe that your gods can make mistakes, then that creates more of a door to be open for doubting, right?
Or closing doors, actually, in this book. This book's all about closing doors.
Exactly. So on the one hand, you know for a fact that your God exists, like know it. Yep. But on the other hand, you know that your God can make mistakes. So where does that leave you, you know, in trying to maintain your faith in a situation like this, right?
Sure. Does it make it easier or worse? Like, is that a better state to be in?
Exactly. So,
I mean, I don't know the answer, but some folks would rather not know. Like,
right.
Yeah.
So I thought, as I was trying to decide, you know, because she starts out the book already questioning her faith. That's what was going through my mind, is trying to figure out like how did she get to that point, and is it harder or easier for her as a result of how things are arranged in this world? So.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think a large part of Sola's character is that she put all her faith on the Empress. And when the Empress died, right, that was literally a sign from Sigmar that he was there and caring, right? Because he took her up. He said, "Yep, she's one of these faithful," right? But Sola couldn't see it.
Right.
She didn't know that that's what the sign was, right? And so she's sitting there this whole time saying, "Sigmar has not answered my prayer." And the first scene of the book, Sigmar answers her prayer, just not in the way that she wants it to be answered.
Or that anybody recognizes necessarily.
Or that anybody recognizes, exactly. Right?
Which is a very common
religious thing, yeah.
In modern day is the, you know, do they not answer, or are they just not answer the way you are seeing or expecting, or
right?
Sigmar works in mysterious ways.
Well, and you know, what I did like this arc because it reinforced. There was a statement real early on in the Realm Gate Wars where the Stormcast have returned. They're newly returned to the Mortal Realms, and I think they get attacked by a Tzeentchian warband. And and I wish I could remember which character, but one of the Stormcast characters is like, well, let's not judge these guys too harshly. Like, who knows what they had to endure while we were behind the gates of Azyr, right? Yeah. Like, and here we're seeing exactly what it was. You know, this is what they had to endure. This, you know, nigh upon impossible thing. But the whole reforging thing, like, we know people got pulled before they died. You didn't always have to die to get reforged. We know also that you could get reforged theoretically even after you turn to chaos, right?
Or even after you turned undead.
Sure, exactly. But Torglug the Despised ends up in a pit gets corrupted, still gets reforged. So, you know, it's hard to figure out where, you know, it'd been easier for Sulla if she was like some of these other folks who got pulled and reforged earlier, or what if she had, what if she had died in battle?
Yeah, if she died against Blood Tongue,
reforged just because. And so does she lose her chance of being reforged just because she was pushed farther? She wasn't like the Empress who got to die fighting the Winnower.
Yeah, she
got stuck, trying to save who she could towards the end, and as a result, she gets pushed. She hits her limit, and she endured trials that some of these others didn't have to. So is that fair to her?
Mm-hmm. Whose side are you on?
Well, the other really interesting thing about Sulla's character is that all these things you're talking about, she's on the right side of the door, but she always starts on the wrong side of the door, right? She thinks she's coming to rescue the City of Gears. But she gets there, and she's being rescued from within, right? She gets to the gate, and she thinks that she's going to lead them into, lead all of these refugees into the tunnel. But then she gets inside, and she can't stop them from leaving them behind, right? Like, and even in the rail gate, she wants to go through, but she can't get through. She's always on the wrong side of the gate, right? And it's a really interesting perspective because Luvius is on the right side of the gate, right? And he makes some very bold and valiant choices. But then when the option to give up needing to make those choices is presented to him, he's like, this is great, right?
Well,
like,
and to further your point, she sees those the Lantic warriors and kingdoms ride up, and she thinks she's about to get saved again, but her saviors are not Sigmar, right?
Yeah.
Which, yeah. I mean, and this kind of to the point of, we were talking about this a little bit, and I alluded to it. These gods are like more like Greek pantheon, right? They have human characteristics. They're based on that. And I don't always think that, like,
he was a human, by the way.
Right. But that being a god is necessarily about being flawed or not flawed, especially lowercase g. But it's about how much power you have, right? Like, when Sigmar does a thing, it ripples, right? It can affect, like, whole sections of a realm, or it can affect an entire realm. He has the power to close all those doors, etc., or reshape souls, or all that kind of stuff. And to the point too of, like, whenever you're on the wrong side of the gate, the person who closed the gate is evil. When you're ever on the right side of the gate, quote unquote, there's either mercy or there's some sort of justification for it. And I think and in some cases, the two people, the people on both sides have the exact same perspective. One's just luckier than the other. In the case of somebody like Sigmar, who can be, like, when the gates are open, he can have aspects of himself in multiple places, right? And has the kind of knowledge of what's happening and where the war is going, and not having, Galmaraz or blah 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 blah, and his pantheon is tumbled down. I mean, before the Age of Chaos, Tyrion and Teclis and Malarian are off doing their own thing and already splitting the party, right?
Never split the party.
So I mean, like, he's already kind of like, hey, I got this whole group together to try and make sure that everybody was protected, but I'm just one god. Yeah. So I mean, his perspective is, on one hand, is judged by the people who are on the wrong end of his judgment. On the other side, you can't possibly know what he knows to make that decision.
Right. Yeah. And as someone who, I give him a hard time, and we joke about, he ran away. Everyone jokes about, he ran away to Azyr, took his ball, went home, et cetera, but, like, how much harder was it his decision? Like, I always thought about his decision to close the gates of Azyr as being like, he's sealing the gates and he's writing off the lives of all these people. But not only was it that, but he was, like, consigning to some of these souls to damnation, being claimed by chaos or turning to chaos, or, both basically. And so, man, like, the cost of that decision was even higher than you at first realize at first glance. So,
yeah.
Well, I want to push further into that idea there. And one of the really interesting things here is, like, one of the conversations that obviously comes up is Sigmar a tyrant because he's allowing all this stuff to happen, or is he benevolent, right? But when you're talking about closing the gate, right, knowing that he has no power to fight on, and knowing that that's the best decision that he can make, and then the thing is, everybody's like, oh, he just sat up there and he did nothing, right? But he didn't. He sat up there and he watched everything, right? This is one of the worst moments of the mortal realms at this point, right? You had this gorgeous, beautiful civilization that had survived for thousands of years.
And you're talking about
knows,
go ahead.
So he's watching this Lantic Empire dissolve, and he's watching it. And you know he's watching it because he picks the ones that he wants to save. So he has to watch the destruction of the mortal realms and then choose which ones to take. But he watches every single moment of the destruction of the mortal realms.
It's kind of creepy.
Yeah, you're talking about a being who is
Isn't it?
traumatized by having this happen. Like, he's fought this fight before,
Exactly.
and he's been on the losing side, and he can see he's about to be on the losing side again. And so then, I mean, maybe that steals your resolve to make those hard decisions when you're like, well, okay, I got to do something to save it this time because it didn't work last time.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that I liked about what you said too, Davey, was in the sense of like he knew the cost better than anybody. Like when we see the, Caslin and Sulla fighting against closing that gate, like they don't know the repercussions of that really, right? They know some people are going to die. That's what they believe. Well, they don't know that corruption. They don't know that, those people aren't going to become the next warlord that kills the next, group of whatever, like, or those souls get lost into chaos. And when you are, again, I mean, we see it with Teclis and the elf gods, is that they have the power to souls don't necessarily cease to exist, right? They go on, and sometimes they go to Shyish, right? They're supposed to go to Shyish, but even from there, you can create new things from them. And so then we get into this idea of like, is this in the idea of like past lives, right? If there's this being that dies right now, Ilariel or Sigmar or or Teclis could turn that soul into something else, right?
Right.
The soul is more important than the individual, maybe, right? The being, what exists below the character, the personhood, making sure that those things survive. Perhaps is a higher thing, and again, that's something that only a god is going to care about compared to, nameless, peasant.
Sure. Well, and furthermore, it's not just the good guys could do something good with them, but rather the bad guys can also do something with them. So you're not just making yourself weaker by losing those souls, but you're potentially making the other side even stronger as opposed to just losing.
Yeah, it's like a Blood Knight's shield.
I don't know.
One rend is like two rend.
What? That's crazy.
Sorry.
What else you guys want to talk about?
I think that covers it for me.
Should we go through the gate?
Peace out. So do we want to do like a final review?
Yeah.
I do.
All right. So I don't think I don't know that I have a valuable like rating compared to other things, but this was a fantastic use of my time. It was so enjoyable to read, and I loved the characters. So and the fact that this was Evan's first time in the mortal realms. I would love to see more from Evan Dickens and did I get that right? Evan Dickens. Dicken, no S. And I would love to see him do some more with either new characters or same characters or whatever. I really enjoyed it. Pat the Glory didn't make sense to me at first, but now it does, so I don't have any critiques.
Nice. Pulse Pictures next on my list.
All right. I really enjoyed it. I would probably give it 8 for 8, especially for such a short story, having so much discussion and like so much interest in it. I thought it was really cool. So if any critiques, I probably would have liked just a little bit more high fantasy, but the City of Gears is pretty awesome. The Sacred Geometries is pretty awesome. So that's a very weak criticism.
More Corridon Overlords.
Or more,
yeah, that'd been nice.
Spider Fang would have been nice too.
Oh yeah, Spider Fang.
More crazy theory fodder.
Davey, enlighten me.
I very much enjoyed it. Highly recommend it. and it had that morally complex thing going on, which is a huge bonus for me. Like, just made it engaging, and in that short space wrote characters that I believed. Even Livius, who I initially was like, oh man, like I'm gonna have to have a third of the book devoted to this guy. He seems like kind of a washout. He had a good arc towards the end, and I was invested in that guy too. So really excited, like Eric said, really excited to have this guy in the stable of Black Library authors, and hope that we get a chance to read something else by him soon.
Right. For me, I echo what everybody else has said. There's not much else to say beyond what they said. It's a very easily digestible, but not to say simple book. The characters are all very believable, and I enjoyed following, as we alluded to, following them through their arcs, and they all had very distinct, like clear, followable arcs, which was nice, but by no means predictable per se. The title of the book notwithstanding. That the AOS fiction I like the most is where we deal with like big picture events, but then we see what like people's reaction to those events are. So like we're dealing with the beginning of the Age of Chaos, the closing of the gates to Azyr, but I like dealing with those realm shaking events, but then seeing how an empire in the realm of metal, how they react to it, how they deal with it. It takes a big thing and really condenses it down into a small digestible way. And this executes that perfectly. And that's exactly like what I want to see in AOS fiction. So that's what it does. Good job.
1, you did have more to say than what was said. And 2, I told you you were going to say, so I'm done, podcast over.
Sure. And I'm done. You're better at my jokes than I am.
Well, you just create the framework, and all right. It's time for our reforging. Like and subscribe our YouTube channel. Comment below. Leave a review for us on iTunes. Come follow us on Podbean. Follow us on Twitter at Mortal Realms. Davey, where can we find you on Twitter?
At red_Zeke.
Aaron?
I'm at Dos Asos, DOSACEOS.
Paul?
And I'm at PJ Shard, PJSCHARD.
And I'm at Stone Monk Gamer.
Real quick, can I jump in? Just so the channels is at Mortal Realms. Like, if you guys read the book and you have other stuff that like things you thought were neat about the book, by all means, like let us know. Like, I'm tired of talking to these 3 schmucks. I want to hear what you guys have to say about the book.
Aaron, you're done.
Peace.
Adios. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, guys. Oh, it's still recording. Should I hit it?